Hi, I'm John Brougher with NGP Van, and welcome to Progressive Spotlight. This is a new idea we're having, a video and audio podcast that we'll release about once every month, where we'll feature some of the brightest minds in the progressive movement. This episode, we're interviewing Ethan Roeder, who's the executive director of the New Organizing Institute. So thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, please subscribe and share it around. Thanks and welcome. So, folks, thank you for watching. I'm John Brougher with NGP Van. I'm really excited to have here with me Ethan Roeder from the New Organizing Institute. So, Ethan, just in case one of the few folks hasn't heard of NOI yet, the New Organizing Institute, can you tell us a little bit about it, what it's all about, what you're trying to do?
Absolutely, yes. There are definitely folks out there who haven't heard of us. The New Organizing Institute has been around since 2005, and it was founded by some folks who came off the Kerry campaign. And although they lost, after they drank away some of their sorrow, they realized, we actually did some stuff right on the campaign.
Right.
They raised a boatload of money online. They tried some new techniques. A lot of it was, the early days of online engagement. And they decided, we want to hold on to some of what we learned, and we want to teach other people. So they had a convening in Maryland, had some conversations about how they were going to do it, and NOI was sort of grown out of that. So the whole idea of NOI has always been identifying gaps in the progressive movement, identifying places where we can be doing better, where we can be learning from the best practices of those among us that are really pushing the envelope, and we can all take those tactics out into the field and use them to win. So that means we do a lot of training. We do training on relationship-based organizing, but also a lot of training on using new tools. A lot of van trainings. We do digital trainings using online media, culture of analytics. We also have started to do some heavier tech trainings recently, some programming training. So we're having a SQL training coming up later this month. We have a Python training. And then in addition to that, we do a lot of partnerships with folks in the space. We do some campaigns coaching, working directly with campaigns. We're doing a lot of citizenship work right now, for instance. We were involved with the coalition that was doing the rallies at the Supreme Court around the gay marriage decisions last week. We do some research, some electoral research, sort of, again, trying to identify where there are opportunities on the map for progressives. And then we also do some nonpartisan work. We have an election administration team here that does tremendous work in that space. For instance, managing the Voting Information Project. Right. So when you go to Google and you type in your address and it tells you where your polling location is, all those polling locations are collected by the team here at NOI. And many of them were published by states in this standardized format that we helped them establish. And some of them are just done the old-fashioned way. But the bottom line is we make sure that Google and really anybody else out there that wants to use that information has access to it. And in 2012, we had over 25 million people using that information.
That's fantastic. So the short answer is that NOI does kind of a little bit of everything, right?
That was a long answer, yes. The short answer is yes. NOI does a little bit of everything, and yay, progressives.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So my understanding here, correct me if I'm wrong here, Ethan, but so you started as ED fairly recently, but you have been connected with NOI for a long time, right?
Yep.
How did you get to NOI?
Sheer luck. It's basically the story of my entire career. I just follow my nose and end up in really awesome places. I met Judith Freeman on the Obama campaign in 2008.
Uh-huh. Were you in Chicago? Or?
I was in Chicago, yeah. I started in Las Vegas back in spring of 2007, working with my crew back there.
You were a young casino operator who got spotted
right.
by the talent scouts at the
right.
Obama campaign.
Yeah, I was taking pictures of people on their way out of the Penn and Teller shows, and you try and sell them the pictures. That was my game. Exactly. That was my racket. And they were like, you know how to work a camera, maybe you can come in here and help us with the voter file. So they took me off the streets, and I learned the job as I went. And, it's not that far from off, actually.
We'll have a special After Dark version of this afterwards, for only a certain group of folks, the real truth.
Yeah, most of what happened in Las Vegas, I think, would only be appropriate for the After Dark podcast. Exactly. Ended up in Chicago for the general, and Judith was working on the new media team there.
Right.
It's funny, the team changes every presidential cycle. The name of that team changes. When Judith worked on The equivalent team for the Kerry campaign in 2004 was called the Internet team.
Wow, right, yeah.
2008 it was new media. 2012 it was digital.
Right.
So Lord knows what it's been called in 2016. Maybe just 0100.
Right. Do you have an opinion on the new media versus digital versus nomenclature? Social? I mean, some people use social as for everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of the opinion that it's getting to be more and more just a part of the way that we do everything. So I think that's
good answer.
I think that's probably why. Yes, I think that's probably why we're struggling with how to name it, because it's it's not just one thing.
Right. So you're starting out as ED here. Are there certain priorities you have big for NOI? What is the next few months? What does the next year look like for NOI?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer your question by telling you what came next after I met Judith. So then I came onto NOI here, and I basically ran the data and technology department here.
Oh yeah, I know your story. Finish your story.
Yeah.
I want to hear the full story.
No. And I say it because this is sort of informing my thoughts about what is next for NOI, and it's also a way for me to stall because we haven't entirely figured that out yet. We're getting there, but I came here as the data and technology director, and we really built out that aspect of NOI's work.
Right.
So we had our first data boot camp, a week-long training where we bring in people with promise and talent from all over the country, many of them organizers, some of them with no political experience. And for a very intensive week, we train them on all aspects of political data management, how to use Excel, how to use Access. If you want to get into SQL or GIS, we have some sessions for that.
Nice.
9 hours worth of van training. So that's the kind of work I did here. I brought the data boot camp together. We worked on the voting information project. We brought that into NOI. And then I went back to the Obama campaign for the re-elect. I was the data director on the re-elect. So coming back here for me really is coming back to family.
Right.
This is an organization that I think a lot of people feel a really special relationship with, especially if you've worked here. And I certainly feel that way. I think it's just a really special part of the progressive movement. It's sort of like a home away from home for organizers. And we really try to be a support structure for the progressive movement. We try to help the movement move forward through people by identifying talent and bringing that talent into the movement and building them up and giving them tools and tactics and techniques that are really cutting edge, really effective, giving them, the cultural appreciation of a data-driven approach to your work so that you're measuring what you're doing, you're measuring the impact. And there's really more need for that now than there ever has been.
Right.
Now, I'm somebody who, when I look at the documents that are starting to pop up on the right now, these various treatises of how they're going to get things right, how they're going to do things better, I look at it and I think, well, at least they're being self-critical. At least they're asking these tough questions of themselves, right? At least they're actually trying to figure out how they can create some change in their own ranks, and we've got to constantly be doing that. We can't for a minute just fall back on our laurels and think, oh, we've got this vast advantage now. The digital divide, they'll never catch up. We've got this figured out, and these guys are all just
remember 04, right? We were saying that about the right.
Exactly. Yeah, Karl Rove was talking about a permanent Republican majority, right? And look at how quickly that evaporated. And, the same, it was a technological story back then, too. They had this unified voter file. They had these micro-targeting, these techniques that we couldn't possibly hope to catch up with. And that's exactly right. That's a perfect framing, I think, of the way that I look at the era right now, which is, I think it's a dangerous one for progressives. It's dangerous that we might become too comfortable with the idea that demographics are destiny. Just look at the map, look at, how much support we have among younger folks, among more diverse populations. We're golden. We're going to ride that out, add that to our tech advantage. And
we'll
really
just sit over here and wait, right?
Exactly, and we'll just watch it all roll in. Just watch all the votes roll in.
Electoral votes.
Exactly. We're going to get showered with them.
Right.
These are the moments when we need to be thinking all that much more critically about how we can be doing better and how we can make sure that we maintain our edge in our own heads, how we maintain that hunger to keep improving.
Right.
And that's I think that's an important role that NOI is here to play.
Right. Well, I know, Ethan, one thing that And I didn't know it's just one part of NOI's mission, but I feel like one thing NOI has always done really, really well is you talk about support structures. Is I feel like NOI has been a major support structure for a lot of progressive organizers and activists. One question I have, because I know it's a lot of folks' minds, is you were helped off the streets by the first Obama campaign, but quite seriously, a lot of us came from our first campaign, et cetera. I feel like there's got to be a lot of FOs out there, a lot of people who are just starting in campaigns or are trying to start on campaigns that just feel like this industry is so opaque, right? Mm-hmm. So how do I break through? Or even, maybe they've been in FO a few cycles, but they just can't seem to get to RFD. They can't get to field director. They can't get to, maybe they want to go into political or press, right? So, this is a very broad question. As a very experienced operative now, how, to someone just starting out, what do you say to them at this point? How do they break through?
That's a great question.
It's not an easy question, but I feel like you have a lot of good insight on it. So
yeah, well, it's certainly something I've thought about a lot because I've had to build large teams before. For instance, our data team on the Obama re-elect was 107 people.
Wow.
Just dedicated to doing data work by the time we got to Election Day. And when you have to build a team that large, especially when it's in a new industry, that the market in 2012 was unprecedented. Right. We had labor unions and advocacy groups and campaigns all over the map that were hiring people dedicated to do, not only data but also analytics and social media work. You have to create your workforce while you're hiring. And so these questions are inextricably linked to hiring good talent for anybody that's out there running a campaign. It's always a challenge. If I was, giving a piece of advice to anybody, I think it's always pretty much the same thing, which is just hustle.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that, I can speak truthfully as somebody who's hired dozens of people that I almost never looked at somebody's education on a resume. It's totally irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
Whether or not you have a PhD or you have a GED. It's totally irrelevant to me. All I'm looking for is, do you have the skills? Do you have some experience? And do you have hustle?
Right.
And I know you have hustle because we have a hiring test. You're going to take the test. You're going to prove to me that you're able to do it, that you can knock it out. You're willing to do what it takes to get the job done. And if you've got that kind of spirit and that kind of attitude, then you can make it in politics.
Right. On that sort of same line about support structure, helping out new organizers. New organizers. See what I did there?
Yeah.
That was bad.
Yeah, it's good.
If you're starting out, right, I feel like a lot of the questions folks have are people are trying to think about, do I go into digital? Do I go into organizing? Do I go into some other field? How data, for example?
Yeah. So we had these brown bags on the campaign, and every Friday afternoon, somebody else in the Chicago headquarters on the Obama campaign, somebody else would talk about their job.
Right.
And it was fascinating and great to hear about weird random shit that the advanced people would do or whatever. But there was a woman from policy there one day, and somebody asked, basically, I'm interested in policy, what do you recommend? And her answer was, I think, appropriate for pretty much any field, and that was, pick a subject that you're interested in and become an expert in that. Learn more about the environment, or learn more about the Middle East, or whatever it is, the thing, the policy area that you want to go into.
Right.
Just become very well versed in that policy area. Because you're not going to get very far if you just have sort of a nebulous idea of the type of work that you want to be doing. And you're also not going to enjoy doing it unless it's something that you're passionate about. Right. So what I found in politics is, honestly, pretty much every skill set under the sun has a place on a campaign, right? If you're motivated to work hard, work long hours, and you believe in the cause, then you're going to find a way to contribute in a productive fashion on a campaign.
Right.
So follow your nose. Do the stuff that you're curious about. That's how I got into data. I was just curious. I did field to begin with. I started off as an organizer. Right. And I just got curious about the lists. Where do these things come from and why are they so screwed up? And maybe this can be done better. Right. And I just kind of went from there. So that was my horrible answer.
I don't think it was horrible at all. Do you think that there's ever... I realize that no matter what kind of organizing we're doing, it's all about just different mediums. It's all largely the same kinds of concepts, right? But do you ever feel like there's a tension between, data and digital and, field organizing and, all the same kind of concepts, all the same kind of overarching strategies, but it often feels like those teams are very separate. Yeah. Is that ever something that you feel or, at NOI or just in your experience generally? Or?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd be curious what that looks like on a Senate campaign or within a state party. Because my experience with that has largely been on a presidential campaign where you've got literally 300 people on the digital team. Right. And then you've got 50 people on the engineering team, you've got 50 people on the analytics team.
Right.
These are nation states that are basically trying to figure out how to negotiate with each other, right? And I honestly think it's less about there being some sort of inherent, like, different philosophy of people that do data versus people that do social media. And I think it's more about the fact that these are relatively new professional areas in politics. People are still learning how it works. People are still figuring it out.
Right.
So what I observed, for instance, on the Obama campaign in the early part of 2011 was a number of director-level people came on board, people who were there to run the digital program, to run the tech program, to run whatever it was. And they naturally had sort of their own ideas about what that meant, about what priorities the campaign should set, given their sort of professional area of expertise. And it's only natural that there's going to be conflicts.
Right.
The thoughts that you have in your head when social media is the way that you think about turning out votes are going to be different than if you do field.
Right.
So, it's really, I think, more a question of good management. It's more a question of being attuned to what your staff is having problems with, what your staff is telling you they need in order to really kick ass and do good work, giving them enough space to do it, and cutting off at the pass any kind of philosophical disagreements between entire departments, because those are always going to come up,
right?
Especially in these emerging professions. But as long as a manager you're paying attention to it and you're finding a way to make executive decisions and keep people moving forward, it can be a positive experience instead of a negative one.
Right. But so it seems like the question of the hour is NOI's getting all this very deserved attention finally post-election for a lot of work that it seems like you folks have been doing this for years, right? Yeah. A lot of work building the culture of analytics, a lot of work building the culture of the progressive movement itself.
Yeah.
I think, along with the Analyst Institute and a lot of other great partners in the space, I think it seems like the question of the hour is, really what's sort of next? You folks are getting a lot of accolades, got a lot of really great attention. What is next in the priority list? There are going to be a million, so you don't have to choose one. But what are you looking at now as you move forward?
I really think that I have another boring answer in store for you. I think that what's next for NOI is we double down on the people side of politics. We double down on investing in the next generation of practitioners that are going to be working on the 2016 presidential campaign. They're going to be working on the midterms in 2014. Right. And we make sure that they have the best tools they can possibly have, and that they're thinking creatively and critically about how they can use the information in front of them, how they can create that culture of analytics for their campaign, and how they can use the best practices to get out there and kick some ass. Right. Because we've got too much opportunity in front of us right now to let it go to waste.
Right.
Demographics is not destiny, but it's certainly opportunity.
Right.
And there's a ton of it out there, all over the map. And, we've been on the defense. Progressives have been on the defense. It feels like, even though we've won the presidency, it feels like we've been on the defense, for the last 6 years, right? And there's plenty of opportunity out there for us to make gains. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get really aggressive about getting out into new places, getting out of D.C. and finding talent on the West Coast, finding talent in the South, finding talent in the Midwest and the Plains, wherever we can, doing trainings in more places, having a presence from coast to coast so that we can really pull this progressive talent up into our ranks, train them up, and get them prepared for victory couple of years.
Awesome, absolutely. Well, it seems like as a follow-up, one of the things that we're all focused on, I know, for example, the big thing we've been talking about, right, is sort of Adria Richards and talking about sort of women in technology. But that's just one of a million different examples. We talked about how, as a young organizer, you should be hustling more to get a job, right? What are there things you think the movement needs to do better for organizers? Diversity is one piece of it, but this is a long list. But off the top of your head, what kind of things leap out to you on we as a movement we can do better?
Yeah. Management and longevity are the two things that come to mind.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so number one, I just don't think that there's a culture of management, at least not in the political space that I've worked in, and I don't frankly think in the progressive space there's much of a culture of management. And what I mean by that is there are certainly good managers in the progressive space, but they're not good managers by design. They're good managers because they paid deliberate attention to their own kind of management technique. Right. We haven't created structures within the progressive movement to make sure that practitioners, when they become a regional field director or a field director or whatever, when they're managing people, that they just have basic tools that they can use to be effective managers, to be listening to their staff, to be making decisions based on input from everybody.
Right.
And I've seen way too many situations. I actually wrote a tip of the day on this during the campaign that I got a lot of attention for. My tip of the day was quit your job.
Right.
And basically my tip was, if you're not getting the respect you deserve, if you don't feel like the passion you're bringing to your job is being acknowledged and is being taken into consideration in your management situation, leave tomorrow.
Right.
Just leave, because there's other good work for you to do out there.
Right.
There are plenty of other places where you can go be respected and also do excellent work. You don't have to feel like the mission, right? The cause is somehow a yoke that you have to suffer under. Right. You can be both happy and really effective in your work. And the other thing I would say is this is a popular complaint to level, but there's just way too much cyclical losing our intelligence, right? Losing our infrastructure. Technology gets built up, the systems get built up, and then they just disappear. And then the next cycle we have to build it again. I think that's part of why NOI has a lasting presence in the progressive space, because we invest in people. Right. We invest in what we know is going to be sticking around over time, and hopefully we're helping them find a way to stick around, whereas they might not otherwise see opportunities that they have. But the progressive space needs to find a way to maintain really world-class infrastructure and continue to improve upon it for the next 20 years, right. Not just for the next 2 years.
Right. So, and I'll let you think about this for a second, but are there events coming up that you want to throw out there, and where can folks get more information about the New Organizing Institute if they want to learn more about it?
Well, folks can always go to our beautiful website, neworganizing.com. You'll see lots of buttons and pictures on that website that you can click on and do things with. Trainings. We have a SQL training coming up, a Python training coming up. We have a narrative training coming up in California. You want to learn how to tell the story of self, how to organize around that. We also have some boot camps coming up. We have a data boot camp and an advanced data boot camp coming up later in the summer.
That's fantastic.
We have our social media boot camp coming up. You're going to see all that stuff listed out on our website. Roots Camp is our sort of flagship conference that we do about once a year. For instance. That's not going to be coming up until later in the year, but that's a great opportunity for organizers to get to know each other and hear about some exciting projects that are going on in the space. If you're in DC, we also have a really fun program that we just launched last week called NOI Labs.
Oh, right, yeah. Talk about that for a second. That's really exciting.
Yeah. And what NOI Labs is an opportunity to basically convene a conversation around progressive tech. So if you're a coder, or if you're somebody who's interested in helping us test, we have these meetings about once every 2 months. We had about 55 people at our last meeting. There's free beer. That doesn't hurt. You're not required to drink it, but it is there for you if you like. We have some presentations from some folks in the community that talk about the projects they're working on. So, for instance, this last meeting we had somebody from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau talking about open data in government. We had somebody talking about a canvassing app that they're developing. We talked about some of the open source tools that we're building here at NOI. And that's all just opportunities for folks to get involved, help out, or just meet other folks in the progressive tech community here in DC and hear about what they're doing.
That's fantastic. And I know Roots Camp's not for a while, but is it going to be around the same time this year, too, in the November-ish, December-ish time?
I should definitely know the answer to that question.
We'll just edit this in post. It's fine.
Yeah, Friday.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just get your lips moving and then we'll put it in so. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But Ethan, thank you so much. Seriously.
My pleasure. Thanks, John. It's great talking to you.